In 2 Kings chapter 5, if you remember, we had looked a little while ago at the story of Naaman. Naaman, the commander of the army of Syria. Naaman had leprosy, and he was told by a captured girl of Israel to go to the man of God, to the prophet, to be healed. And so Naaman goes. He ends up coming to Elisha. Elisha tells him what he needs to do. We know that in 2 Kings 5, Naaman didn't like that at first, but then Naaman's servants convince him to do what Elisha told him. And when Naaman dips 7 times in the Jordan River, like he was told by Elisha, he's healed of his leprosy. And he comes back to Elisha, and in verse 15, offers Elisha a gift. I've been healed. This is great. This is wonderful. I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. He alone is God. Take this gift. But if you remember in verse 16, Elisha said, "As God lives, as the Lord lives before whom I stand, I will receive nothing." And Naaman urged him to take a gift, and Elisha still refused and said no. And so then finally, Naaman's going to end up going his way in verse 19. But if you keep going, there's actually another part of that event. There's something else that took place right after that, and it has to do with verse 20, a fellow by the name of Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God. So Naaman, doing what Elisha had told him to do, Naaman has been healed of his leprosy. Naaman offered a gift. Elisha turned him down. Well, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said in verse 20, if you'll read or listen along with me, he said, "Look, my master has spared Naaman the Syrian while not receiving from his hands what he brought. But as the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him." Gehazi is thinking, man, why didn't Elisha take the gift? We could have had money, we could have had clothes, we could have had any of this nice stuff that this man, was offering. Gehazi's, bummed, frustrated that Elisha did not receive this gift from Naaman. So Gehazi gets in his own head. I'm going to go after Naaman, and I'm going to get something for myself. Even if Elisha doesn't want anything, I'm going to go get something for myself. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. When Naaman saw him running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, Naaman said, "Is all well?" I would kind of wonder too. Naaman had left Elisha, and now all of a sudden Elisha's, servant comes running after him, and maybe Naaman's thinking, I hope everything's okay. What's going on? Gehazi says, verse 22, "All is well. My master," notice this, "my master has sent me saying, indeed just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the mountains of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments." And as you and I know, in reading this text from the get-go, this is a bunch of baloney. So Gehazi is being greedy. Gehazi is wanting material things. Gehazi is wanting a gift, and so his greed has now led him to concoct this story about Elisha needing a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments for some people that have come. And it's a bunch of baloney. It's a lie. Gehazi's greed has led him to lie and to deceive. So Naaman, not knowing this, of course, Naaman said, "Well, please take 2 talents. 2 talents of silver." And he urged him and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of garments and handed them to 2 of his servants, and they carried them on ahead of him. Naaman not knowing anything about it. Maybe, again, Elisha's obviously changed his mind. Elisha needs some help. So Naaman's willing to do it. Well, when Gehazi came to the citadel, he took them from the servants' hands and stored them away in the house. And then he let the men go, and they departed. And now Gehazi comes, verse 25. When Gehazi went in and stood before his master, he goes in and acted like, everything's fine. Elisha, course, being a man of God, with the Spirit of God, Elisha knows what has happened. God did not allow this to go unnoticed. So Elisha said to Gehazi, "Where did you go?" Almost like a perfect comic strip. Gehazi says, "Well, your servant did not go anywhere. What are you talking about? I was just kind of hanging around. I was, just outside. I didn't go anywhere." And Elisha says to Gehazi, "Did not my heart go with you when the man turned back from his chariot to meet you? Is it time to receive money and clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants?" Is that what this is all about, basically? Is this the time and the place to be? Elisha's basically, Gehazi, I said no for a reason. And then notice verse 27, the consequences. "Therefore the leprosy of Naaman will cling to you and your descendants forever." And Gehazi went out from the presence of Elisha leprous, as white as snow. And from then, I would assume from what Elisha said, that leprosy would be in the family of Gehazi for a long time. What we see here is an example of where greed can get us. Greed and covetousness in and of itself is a sin. How many times throughout the Old Testament, New Testament, is greed and covetousness condemned by God and by the messengers of God? And how many times did the people of God have a problem with greed and covetousness in others? And how many times was it punished? Greed and covetousness in the heart, that is sin. God told his people not to covet, not to envy, not to be greedy. But then also, to borrow from what the Apostle Paul would say in one of his letters to Timothy, that the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Look where it led Gehazi. Gehazi's greed and covetousness led him to lie, to deceive, to pretend like nothing happened. Greed, covetousness can lead to all kinds of sin. And we see that throughout the history of mankind, the history given in the Bible, that the love of money, greed, covetousness, jealousy, envy has led to so many sins. Lying, cheating, stealing, killing. And so we need to learn from Gehazi to check our hearts, to check our minds. What is our focus in life? Are there times we're greedy or covetous? Or has our greed and covetousness ever led us to do something or say something that we shouldn't have done or said? And so from Gehazi's example, we are reminded and warned about greed, about lying, about cheating, stealing, killing, all of this stuff that can come from the love of money. So let's learn not to be like Gehazi. Let's check ourselves and make sure that our hearts and minds are right where they need to be, focused on God, content, loving God, loving others. And let's keep greed and covetousness out of our hearts, out of our lives, so that we can prevent any other sins to come after. God bless.